This video is sponsored by Incogni. With the release of Final Reckoning, the Mission Impossible franchise is concluded for the foreseeable future, almost 30 years after the release of the first feature film back in 1996. And interestingly, that is the same distance in time as it is between the original 1966 TV series and the Tom Cruise film series, so that's quite the run. But now that run appears to be over, and at the box office, Mission Impossible was squarely beaten by the live-action Lilo and Stitch remake from Disney. But will the movie still earn enough to be considered a success in its own right? Or is Mission Impossible headed for flop territory like the previous movie, ending the franchise on a whimper? We're about to find out, because maybe the AI angle and electronic threats wasn't the way to go for the big screen, though it's nothing if not relevant. Consider, if you ever signed up for a newsletter, a website, or some other service, then chances are your data was resold without you ever agreeing to it. You see, there's a shadow industry of data brokers aggregating, buying, and reselling personal data like your full name, email address, phone number, home address, SSN, shopping habits, online alias, employment history, financial information, and much, much more. And as valuable as that information may be for those trading in it, all you get out of it is of course spam, and even that is a best case scenario. In the US in particular, your data may end up in public search sites, and health insurance companies are known to use some of that data as determinants of health, meaning your documented online activity may actually increase your rates. There is also the risk that your data sooner or later will be leaked in a data breach, where it's made freely available for outright criminals, putting you at additional risk of more targeted scams and even identity theft, where loans may be taken out in your name. The good news, though, is that no matter how they obtained it, you have the right to request that these data brokers delete the information they have about you. The bad news is that there are hundreds of them, and each and every one of them will try every trick in the book to weasel out of deleting your data, and worse still, even if they do, there's nothing preventing them from collecting it all over again. The really good news then is that Incogni, this video sponsored, can take care of this for you. Incogni helps you protect your privacy and take your personal data off the market by reaching out to data brokers on your behalf. Demand your personal data be removed and plow through their objections as they come. And better still, they'll send repeat removal requests in case they should get a hold of your data again. And best of all, the whole process is automated. All you have to do is create an account, grant Incogni the right to work on your behalf, and kick back and relax while they do the work for you, keeping you up to date with the progress every step of the way. Use our code MIDNIGHT at the link in the description, and you'll get 60% off an annual Incogni plan. So head down to the description and get your data protected now. With that, let's shift our attention to the ultimate fate of Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, and with it, the franchise as a whole. Except for that time when he went all in on Scientology and came across as a total loon to everyone not already affiliated with the church, who merely thought that he was high up on the tone scale. You know, back when then Viacom head honcho Sumner Redstone temporarily fired Cruise from Mission Impossible and everything else Paramount. Apart from that time, Tom Cruise has been one of the most consistent action stars on the planet. When it comes to doing stunts, it's him and Jackie Chan that are in a league of their own. Following the pre-lockdown smash hit that was Mission Impossible Fallout, and the post-lockdown smash hit that was Top Gun Maverick, Tom Cruise truly looked like the last action hero, and prior to their release, the two remaining Mission Impossible movies looked poised to be smash hits as well. And they kind of had to be, because in light of the successes I just mentioned, a lot was gambled on these two connected movies. So connected in fact, that the original titles were Dead Reckoning Parts 1 and 2. And production on Part 1 came at a particularly perilous time, as Hollywood productions were just starting up again, with very expensive security measures in place, and if they didn't work, everything would be shut down again. That's when audio of Tom Cruise scolding people on set leaked online.
We are the gold standard. You're back there in Hollywood making movies right now because of us. I'm on the phone with every studio at night. Insurance companies. Producers. And they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs, you and if you don't do it, you're fired. And I see you do it again, you're gone. No apologies. You can tell it to the people that are losing their homes because our industry is shut down. That's what I sleep with every night. In the future of this industry, we are not shutting this movie down!
Tom Cruise got a lot of flack for that leaked audio, and he deserved none of it, because he was right. At that time, Hollywood was just coming out of a standstill. Everything that was in production was under tight scrutiny, and all those additional security measures caused the production cost to balloon past $300 million, meaning the threshold for success just went up dramatically, so much so that the movie ended up a financial failure because of it. Upon its release in the summer of 2023, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 tapped out at $571 million at the global box office, $200 million less than its predecessor. And that was not nearly enough to qualify it as a hit in light of the high production cost, let alone enough to justify another sequel. Meaning, if Dead Reckoning Part 2 hadn't already been far along in development, the franchise could very well have ended there. So, what went wrong? Why did the previous movie underperform when both the Mission Impossible movie before that and Tom Cruise's earlier Top Gun Maverick were both massive hits? There were a few reasons for that, and I'll get back to most of them as they apply equally to Final Reckoning. But a big one, where Dead Reckoning Part 1 is concerned, was competition in the guise of Barbenheimer, the Barbie and Oppenheimer double billing. At least from a marketing point of view, that stole the thunder of most other 2023 summer movies. And as if that wasn't bad enough, there was another piece of competition that few recognized as such up front, but which probably took a bigger chunk out of Dead Reckoning Part 1 than anything else. That competition was Sound of Freedom. As my colleague Tom Connors pointed out at the time, Dead Reckoning Part 1 had the bad luck to go up against the Angel Studios acquired Sound of Freedom, a movie few cared about in advance, but which just so happened to capture the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time, and certainly the fancy of any US audiences with any kind of conservative bent. Arguably, it rode the same wave that Top Gun Maverick had ridden the year before, making Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 almost an afterthought. In the end, it underperformed. Worldwide, the only reason Dead Reckoning Part 2, soon retitled Final Reckoning, ever happened is because it was already that far along in development. But now, the pressure is on it. So, how did it fare? Well, over the course of the 4-day Memorial Day weekend, it opened to $77 million at the domestic box office. That is, however, counting the Monday, meaning in the regular 3-day frame, it opened to $63 million. Good for most movies, even past Mission Impossible entries, though perhaps not great for what is being billed as the final Mission Impossible movie, and for what is, at the very least, the second most expensive movie in the franchise, possibly the most expensive. The international audience came to the rescue though, and even though there is no Memorial Day outside of the US, the studio found it opportune to include Monday's international figures as well, which provided the marketing victory of the movie having grossed $204 million in its worldwide opening weekend. That is a decent figure, and a franchise best, even if they tacked on one more day, yet it goes to show that the international demand for Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise is greater than the domestic one right now. Celebrating that number, Tom Cruise himself put out a statement on Instagram, which read, "This weekend was one for the history books. Congratulations and thank you to every filmmaker, every artist, every crew member, and every single person who works at the studios. To every theater and every employee who helps bring these stories to audiences, thank you. To everyone that works at Paramount Pictures and Skydance, thank you for your many years of partnership and unwavering support. And most of all, thank you to audiences everywhere for whom we all serve and for whom we all love to entertain. Sincerely, Tom. Still, despite this number and the franchise best opening weekend, an argument can be made that the opening still wasn't high enough given the production cost and the underperformance of the previous movie. While the movie could boast the biggest opening weekend of the franchise, it couldn't boast about opening at the #1 spot anywhere, because that honor went to Disney's Lilo and Stitch remake, which opened to $341 million worldwide in the same time frame and same market, so more than $130 million higher than Final Reckoning. Despite some fan efforts at getting some kind of Barbenheimer thing going, which is commendable, it was never going to work. Barbenheimer worked because it was aimed at couples. Barbie for her, Oppenheimer for him. Both go to both movies during the same opening weekend, and the studios high-five each other. By contrast, Lilo and Stitch is for families. And since the original animated movie came out when younger parents themselves were kids, quite a few parents will feel some nostalgia here and even be enthusiastic about going as a family. Meanwhile, the actual attendance demographics clearly show that Mission Impossible is strictly for dads and even granddads only, which means quite a few dads would be obliged to see Lilo and Stitch instead of Mission Impossible, a movie they'll have to see without their families and with their other dude friends. Hence, the audience for Final Reckoning skewed quite male, with men over 35 making up 62% of its audience. The smallest demographic attending the movie was women under 25, which made up just 5%. Also not helping are mixed reviews and word of mouth. In short, while the previous movie, Dead Reckoning Part 1, faced stiff competition in the guise of Barbenheimer and Sound of Freedom, Final Reckoning, if anything, faced even stiffer competition, and it faced it head-on. The studio had a number of options about which weekend they wanted to open the movie, and it would appear they chose the wrong one. But the movie had other problems as well, and they had nothing to do with the release window. Something that has no doubt helped prior Mission Impossible movies up till this point is that they've been reasonably standalone. So what if you missed a few? Mission Impossible was always a franchise where you could jump in at any point and be fully caught up. And if you weren't, chances are you wouldn't even know. This was by design, as during the promotion of the previous movie, writer and director Christopher McQuarrie opined that fan service, that is, injecting a familiar element, callback or inside joke in hopes of pleasing an audience even though it's not essential to the story, was poison that would only pull the audience out of the movie. He declared back then, "Fan service and fandom is poison. It's deadly. It's great when applied like a very, very strong spice, and judiciously. If you happen to have seen the other movies, great. I don't count on it, because what happens when you add callbacks, the danger of that, is I'm asking you to leave this narrative and remember another narrative, and then come back. Two things are certain to happen. 1. If you know the previous movies, you've left the narrative and I have to spend precious energy bringing you back, while I'm trying to immerse you in a story so that you're not aware the story is happening. Or you haven't seen the other movie and you're suddenly aware that everybody around you in the theater knows something that you don't. In either case, you've disrupted the narrative and broken the chain." McQuarrie cited the blockbuster Top Gun sequel, Top Gun Maverick, a film he wrote along with Eric Singer and Aaron Kruger. While Maverick is very much a continuation of the original, the script strove to ensure that everything necessary to follow each moment was already in the movie you were watching. "We don't assume you're a fan," he said. Maverick was as successful as it was because the disruptions of that narrative chain are very, very minor. and you're almost instantly swept back into the narrative. You watch that movie, and you don't have to think about what's happening. It's not to say I don't want you thinking, I just want you thinking about the movie after. Well, The Hollywood Reporter brought his old words back up again in a story published May 19th, because, as they say in it, Macquarie's comments are a tad ironic this week, as a common refrain in some of the more critical reviews for The Final Reckoning is that the nearly 3-hour film is overly plot-heavy due to striving to feel like a summation of the 8-film franchise, most of which felt like standalone stories until Dead Reckoning and The Final Reckoning. The new movie also contains many callbacks to the previous films, and at least a couple of moments which might be considered fan service. Here at Midnight's Edge, we use a different word for that, namely homework. Word quickly spread that Final Reckoning brings back and closes up storylines from several earlier movies, which many interpreted as, there is homework here, and if the MCU taught us anything, other than with great wokeness comes great brokenness. Or wait for it to hit Disney+. It's that if homework is required, stay home. The Hollywood Reporter touched on another problem there as well, namely the 3-hour runtime. There were a good number of years where the audience were actually conditioned to see 3-hour movies in one sitting, but like oh so many other things, streaming ruined that as well. Now, in no small part thanks to streaming, the audience is if anything conditioned to not go to such long movies, which already had the problem that theaters can only fit half as many screenings of that as a movie with a 90-minute runtime. As we've suggested in live streams, rather than 2 3-hour movies, the studio would have been better off splitting Dead Reckoning into 3 shorter installments rather than 2 really long ones. Finally, there may be some level of franchise fatigue going on here as well. It has, after all, been 8 movies over 3 decades, so some of the novelty may have worn off by now. Plus, it's the rising costs that make up the difference compared to the previous movies. Even with that though, there's a glass half full angle here, which Deadline Hollywood pointed out. Here's the thing, for Hollywood studios, the value of franchise properties increases with each subsequent installment and across multiple revenue streams. Where new entries have one waterfall, franchise films benefit from an entire library. Paramount celebrated the Mission Impossible franchise across home entertainment digital platforms and Paramount+, driving a substantial uptick in views of the previous films on Paramount+ and transactions via digital retail partners. Deadline Hollywood heard that the original 1996 movie alone generates $10 million a year from all types of media for the Melrose lot. Hence, that $300 million plus movie is a lifelong investment that should pay off heads and tails in TV airings and streamings of Final Reckoning. Also remember, Paramount is only on the hook for 50% of the production cost. That of course helps, but it's mostly on paper, because the other half is Skydance, so before long it's the same corporation anyway. Overall, Mission Impossible has been an impressive and enduring franchise for sure, though perhaps over these latter installments, more has been spent on making these films than the market financially will support. So perhaps a break is in order. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, and before you go, remember to protect your data. Use our code MIDNIGHT at the link in the description, and you'll get 60% off an annual Incogni plan.